We don't know where this story is leading, but we know that this story is not just going to stop here. What's up guys, Manny from Motomillion, and this is the story of the Motomillion Panigale V4 SP2. And this story started quite far back because right now, when we're filming this video, we are at the end of 2023. It's November 2023. And the story started off around the fall of 2021 when I received a PDF file, and I don't remember who sent it to me or where I got a hold of this PDF file. It was showing some of the bikes and the accessories that was going to be released along with the 2022 bikes that was coming out. In this PDF file, there were some bikes that I could see. You could see the Panigale V4 and the S models clearly, but there were some blurred out and pixelated bikes that I didn't get to see exactly what they were, but one of the bikes kind of stood out to me because I could tell that it had a silver tank and it was a darker color scheme of the bike. And at this point, the Panigale V4 SP wasn't anything new. It's been out for about a year. So right away I knew that it's some sort of an SP model that's going to come out. And I was really happy to see Ducati at that point finally was going to bring that high mount exhaust back, because as I mentioned, it wasn't just the bikes that was on this PDF document, it was also some of the accessories that was going to come out, and this was right before EICMA for 2021. At this point, I quickly called Charlie from Ducati Detroit because, as some of you guys might not know, and if these guys don't make it too evident for you, the dealership owners actually have the inside information with what bikes are coming out, but they're very, very limited to what they can say because they see some of these projects before, and I think Ducati actually reaches out to the dealer owners to get their feedback on some of these models that they're about to release. And at that point, Ducati Detroit's owner, Charlie, was able to confirm, yes, it's an SP model, which is going to be called the SP2. And me being a fan of racing and remembering watching MotoGP from my earliest childhood memories and a little bit, World Superbike, I was kind of intrigued by this new SP2 model because, considering the fact that there was an SP already out, we already knew that we're probably going to get the carbon wheels, dry clutch. But the 2022 model year was a refresh of the Panigale V4. I really wanted to have a new build with this revised platform just to see what these little tweaks have done to this bike. And after speaking with Charlie, I made it clear that I did want this bike, and he told me that he probably can get the first one in the country for me. Not that I really care to be the first one. I only want to be the first one because then I receive the bike here and we get to start working on it, because as you guys follow along some of our builds, it's quite a lengthy process. It's not just about us making content for you guys, but the parts availability and ordering some of these special parts take a little bit of time. And at this point, we're in the fall of 2021. Obviously, there's a period of silence when, I talked to Charlie saying that I want this and the bike hasn't even been announced yet. And if you guys didn't know, Ducati for these special bikes needs a series buyer to be in place before the dealerships can order it. And I think this was right after New Year's, and we're in the year of 2022 when Charlie called me and said, "Hey Manny, I'm putting your name down for this SP2. Are you really sure that you want it?" And obviously I said, yes, I'm really sure. And this was because he notified me that Ducati might email me or call me to make sure that I'm a legitimate buyer of this motorcycle. And I said, of course, I want it, and if they call me, obviously I'm going to say yes, please send it to me, we're waiting for it. And right at this point, I think it was March of 2022 that Ducati actually unveiled the Panigale V4 SP2, and as expected, this bike had that winter testing livery that we've come accustomed to, which is that black with the red lines. And again, as far as I could see, other than the changes that happened for the 2022 refresh, it had the same formula, right? It had the carbon fiber wheels and the dry clutch, which meant that we actually don't have to change those parts. And let's fast forward to, it was the fall of 2022, I think it was November, and we were kind of getting started and getting to the exciting point of the Motomillion Yamaha R1M build. I believe we were actually flashing that bike. I was expecting a call from Charlie to tell me, hey, your motorcycle arrived, because don't forget, the COVID delays were still happening with production at this time. And I think we were supposed to have it in July, but this was August or September when Charlie called me and said, "Hey Manny, I got some news for you. We received the first bike. but the news is that it's not going to be yours. And I was kind of surprised and thrown off a little bit. But don't forget, when this bike was still being delivered, the first bike, deliveries of the V4 SP was kind of ending. And the last bike that was supposed to be delivered to a customer, the Panigale V4 SP, got destroyed in shipping. Charlie, being Charlie, which I completely understand that you have to take care of your customers, he had promised the gentleman that, okay, you're going to get the first SP2 that we received, even though this was a bike that was for Manny from Motomillion. I don't know if he even disclosed me, but it was a bike that was already sold. But that was the news. We're not getting the first SP2. It kind of bothered me now that I know the number of the bike, because we received number 306. If you know, these bikes are all numbered bikes. They're not limited in production, I believe, but they're just numbered for the production numbers. And I believe if we got that first bike, it would have been number 305. What's the significance? The significance was that we are based in Miami and the area code of Miami was 305. But that being said, you know, that was a little hiccup, and I got a call from Charlie. It was great news. Our V4 SP2 had arrived at Ducati Detroit, but again, there's a little spin-off to it. He said that there was a little bit of a crate damage, which it wasn't too much, that the lower side belly panel got a little bit of a scratch, and he said that no problem, we've already ordered a new part for you. It seems like luckily this part is available, so you're not going to wait a long time to receive it. And that was it. That was good news. And on top of it, at the same time, 650E, which is about an hour away from Ducati Detroit, was coming down to Miami to bring us a bunch of his bikes so that we could see some of the builds. And also he was bringing us the 60th anniversary, that special R1 60th anniversary that we did that got that paint job in Ohio. And it was all coming together. You know, we're receiving a bunch of bikes. We're receiving our next build, which was the 60th anniversary, and also our SP2. And I was really excited because, again, I want to mention to you guys that I had not seen or ridden a 2022 model year refreshed, redesigned Panigale V4 at that point, and I really wanted to see the differences because I get a kick out of it, right? Because I've been involved in these motorcycles in the industry for such a long time that I want to see what the next direction is and where things are going. So I think it was around December that 650E showed up, December of 2022, that he brought that beautiful 60th anniversary that we were going to transform to that amazing machine that it ended up being. But also our V4 SP2 was in there. And right away, I remembered the day clearly. He took that bike out of the trailer and I got on the bike. The first thing that really struck me was that, whoa, I'm almost 6 foot tall and I'm tippy-toeing. And if you guys have sat on a redesigned 22 bike, now the 22, 23, or the 24 bikes that are available, the suspension geometry changes really did change the seating position of these bikes. It sits a little bit taller, and we'll get to the story of what the differences are when you're riding this bike in a little bit. But that was the day that we received the bike, and I was so happy. But when we receive a bike and when I see it in person, that's when my mind starts going, right? What are we going to do to it? Even though we already had some sort of an idea what we're going to do to this bike, just because we haven't seen one in flesh and not much on the internet, because yes, European people get the deliveries first, but there wasn't much content out there. And we started thinking of what do we do to this bike? We can't really change the livery, because why buy a special Ducati and change the livery? Because if you guys have followed up some of our builds, it's not very Motomillion of us to get a special bike from Ducati, because we literally take off everything that's special already and replace it with some other special parts to make it a real Motomillion bike. But that being said, my love and passion for racing and for MotoGP, I had to keep that SP2 livery on it. And that's when we decided that it was not a hard decision, but we're like, okay, the bike is black, and black and carbon fiber go hand in hand. We're going to make it a full carbon bike without the tank, because that silver tank is actually a trademark of the SP and the R series that are out for the Panigale V4 bikes and the Street Fighter V4s as well. So the tank was staying. We're going to go full carbon. Again, at this point, the aftermarket for this new bodywork wasn't out. That's when Full Six got involved and sent us the first set of carbon fiber bodywork that was available for this redesigned bike. And the next question was, so this bike has really cool CNC machined silver accents. Do we keep him? When you think of Ducatis, you think of red, right? Because that's the color of the bike, the magnesium gold color on the bike, and probably black because the wheels are black and there's some black parts on the motorcycle. So having a black bike with a gold engine and silver bikes, I had not visualized it yet to see what we're gonna do, because when I think of CNC machine parts, at least to my taste, I mostly think of a little bit of red, majority of it black. And this was kind of a spin-off to the way of thought that we had, and that's where the philosophy of this bike kind of started happening. That it's gonna be, okay, we're gonna go with silver anodized parts. That's when Motocorsa came in and we got those rear set mounts and the reservoirs. And we also did order those clip-ons from IMA. And furthermore, we always use the MotoGP buttons on these bikes, the MotoGP style buttons on these bikes. So that kind of went together well with this bike, because it was kind of a track inspired build, and those buttons really fit in. And when you look at it, it has more meaning to this build. But also, speaking of the carbon fiber, we decided to go a little bit of a different route, because yes, we had accented some satin and gloss carbon on our previous builds, like our Street Fighter V4, but it was never in the case that we keep a bike mostly carbon fiber, but we are going to use a lot of gloss and a lot of satin parts together. And I'm happy to report that when we're putting it together, and now that when we look at the bike, the parts that we chose that was gloss, that is mostly the, let's say, the inside parts of the bike, and the outer skin being satin and carbon, it turned out so nice that when I look at this bike, it really makes me happy, because it really stands out. And furthermore, it brought us together with Nicholas from Auto Laboratory, who actually put delivery on the bike for us, because we ordered all the stickers from Ducati as we can, but the red parts, that you can't order those, they're not stickers. And we were thinking, what do we do? Painting is going to be way too hard of a mission. We're going to have a little bit of a lip with the paint, and it's just going to be such a pain for the painter to do this. I kind of steer away from the idea, and more we're seeing the use of wraps. That's when Nicholas was like, hey, let's try it with the wrap. If you don't like it, you could get it painted at that point, which was great, I think, because now that we look at the bike, it played out really well. It being a wrap really doesn't bother me, and he did a superb job, because he did hand cut some of those lines. And if you guys followed the build, this is a real bike with character, with Italian character, because the tailpiece, that was a factory tailpiece with a red line on it, it wasn't even centered. So we did kind of improve that, and we made sure that that line was centered when Nicholas did his magic on the bike. Obviously, before we wrapped this bike, we had done a majority of the stuff, like that full high mount exhaust and the brakes, because we were thinking of the brakes, what do we do? And don't forget, when Ducati builds these bikes, they have some sort of a budget that they stick to, not because of homologation, but it's because it's not available to the majority of the consumers, because it is a $40,000 motorcycle. But I believe if Ducati just had thrown all the pieces at it to make it that ultimate superbike that they would do under the SP2 name, that price tag would have gone up quite a bit, and they probably wouldn't have sold as many of them as they did. So there's that sweet spot that they had to hit. That meant that some of the stuff was untouched, right? Like the brake calipers were just the silver Stylemas, and they were the Stylema Rs. Yes, I get it, but then again, that's just a slight difference. That's when we decided that I think the black and red Stylemas with the black and red rear caliper on this bike is going to fit that black and red look of that winter test livery. And further along, you could see that there is a little bit of a black red going on this bike, which now that it's together, I could say it was easy, but trust me, it's a lot of thought process and trial and error, because we do try to put things on it to see how it looks. But I really like, in terms of looks, how this bike ended up. But let's go back onto how this bike rides, because Michael Knight, who is the biggest BMW fanboy that I know of and I've ever seen, he likes to poke at Ducati quite a bit. And let's face it, and I'll be the one to admit it, in terms of sheer speed, the Panigale V4s could never hang with the BMW's K67s. And I think the 2022 was a turning point, because these bikes all of a sudden, I don't know if it's more power they're making or that they're able to deliver that power to the ground. This SP2 was pretty quick. And we know this because me and Michael were just going around and we had just flashed this SP2, and Michael was on his K67 S1000 RR. And if you guys ever seen this bike and the dynos that we've done on his bike, it does put out some amazing numbers, and Michael is a quite small guy. Many people like to just focus on the fact of rider weight, but the rider size has a lot to do with the speed of these bikes, especially on the upper range of the speeds, because if we're able to tuck behind the windscreen and the fairings of these bikes because of the aerodynamic effects, and Michael's a tiny guy compared to me, and he could really tuck behind some of these bikes that he rides, and yes, he's a very skilled rider as well. So we had gone out to ride this bike because I had just flashed it and I really wanted to go ride it. The exhaust sounds amazing. The dry clutch that most of you guys like to, well, most of you Ducati guys that don't like, I really enjoy, and everything was in place. You know, the bike was looking amazing. It had that exhaust sound, and I was just testing it because we had just flashed it. We hadn't dynoed it yet. So I was just trying to gauge how quick the bike is, and let's call it a butt dyno. It's usually not right, but we were riding the bike, and I remember exactly the first time that I got on the throttle of this bike. I was pretty amazed because I was looking down at the dash, and don't forget, these bikes have a new dash layout. As far as I could tell, all the electronics were off except the front ABS. The bike wasn't wheeling like these Panigale V4s used to do, and if you ride some of the Street Fighter V4s and the Panigale V4s of the previous, not the generation, but the first model years of these bikes, you know that once that bike starts reaching to the 10,000 RPM and above, it does start violently lift the front wheel up in the air, especially if you have your electronics off. But when I first got on this bike and I cracked that throttle open, the bike was just really tiny little bit. So I just started thinking to myself, oh my goodness, it's probably not making power. What's going on? It feels quick, but it's not lifting the front wheel. That was too easy for me to crack that throttle open. And yes, we're not much of drag racers, and I'm really not into this roll racing thing with these bikes, but once in a while, you know, everyone wants to crack their throttle open and feel the speed. So that's when my butt dyno was giving me all the wrong signals, because my butt dyno was saying, is there something wrong with the bike? Is the flash not working right? And there came the time that Michael does not like to admit, but when we lined up with him and we actually cracked the throttles of our bikes open. Go! And him being Michael, he was trying to play with me to give me a little head start and make me kind of feel bad when he came blowing by me, but that never happened. I remember he was quiet for a little bit of time, more than he'd like to admit, but we slowed down and he's like, oh my goodness, what's going on? Let's do it again. And we went at it again. We were side by side. That's when I knew, okay, the geometry changes of this bike really did what Ducati was saying. Ducati was saying that you could get on the throttle earlier coming out of a corner, the bike doesn't wheelie as much, it's a more friendly bike to ride, and thus making it a faster bike, because the more throttle application you could put into the bike without being scared of that front end coming up makes the bike inherently faster. And again, I'm almost 6 foot tall, and my build is not exactly very aerodynamic to hide behind these fairings. So at that point, I knew this bike's going to put out some great numbers on the dyno, and I believe it was upwards of a 210 and odd horsepower, which is quite a bit, judging the fact that, yes, I know there's bikes that are showing 220 or whatever on the dyno, but you know, let's not get there because I don't believe those numbers. The way that we dyno these bikes, we're so consistent with our numbers that when I saw it on the dyno, I was very happy, and I knew that it's making every bit of that number that it showed on the dyno. And again, I remember how upset Michael was, because this is the turning point, right? The Panigale V4 is really the king of the super bikes. And going through this whole process of this build, you see that I'm mentioning all these different names that are coming into play. And one name ended up being Omar, the owner of Ducati Miami, which I finally got to meet. Because imagine, we live in the same city. We've been operating a business in the same city for years, but we never got the chance to meet. And I think Omar saw a video of our SP2, and that's when I guess we were both intrigued on some sort of an introduction happened with the friend circle and we got to meet, and he's an amazing gentleman, but also he's a great enthusiast, because let's face it, you really have to be an enthusiast to be in this industry, especially in the field that we're so specialized in, because there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into our businesses. And I got to meet Omar, and we did end up buying our next project bike from him, which was our Diavel V4. Going further with these builds, we finished the SP2, but the real story behind it was how the motorcycling community got together. Because if I look back, look at all the names that got involved, right? We had Charlie from Ducati Detroit that ordered us the bike and got us one of the first bikes that landed in the country. And I'm sorry that I don't remember who sent me that super confidential PDF file, but even that person played a huge part, along with 650E, who brought the bike down for us, Michael Knight, who had tirelessly helped me out, because when 650E came down to Miami, we were like on a time crunch. He had his brand new V4R, and I was very keen to finishing our SP2 to a state that I'm going to be able to ride this bike and compare it to the V4R, because the V4R for the 2023 model year was a such big difference from the previous generation that I really wanted to pitch him against it to see if I could feel the difference of these bikes. But I want to circle back to all the names that this build brought together, because imagine I ordered the bike from Ducati Detroit and Charlie was involved. And then, I'm sorry, I don't remember the gentleman or the lady who sent me that file from Ducati that I'm not supposed to have, or maybe I was supposed to have it. We don't know. Maybe it was intentional. But we got that file from an undisclosed person that I remember. 650E got involved with bringing this bike down to us. We got to meet Omar from Ducati Detroit. And again, all the people behind the scenes in the Motomillion team that make these videos happen and make these builds happen. It is really a team spirit that we have here. And I think these builds bring us together as well. But furthermore, Roland, and if Roland is watching this, which I ended up meeting in North Carolina later on because of the video that we made comparing that V4R to our SP2, which I can't go into the details of how that brings it together, but maybe in the upcoming years, we'll have something to tell you guys and tie back the name of Roland, who is an amazing gentleman and who's a big enthusiast in this motorcycling industry. It's not just that physical product that we're left with, which is a magnificent, I want to call it a piece of art, because yes, they are sculpted pieces of machinery that we get to ride, but I think they're pieces of art. But all these connections and all these friendships that are made end up making it a great story and make it a great thing to be a motorcycling enthusiast. And at this point, I want to say that I'm happy that this bike is finished. There will be an upcoming video of a walk around of the Motomillion V4 SP2 that you guys get to see all of the details to this bike. So unlike the Motomillion R1M, when we were making the story video, we knew where the story is going because the bike was purchased by its new owner at the time. This SP2 right now is still in our possession and it is offered for sale, but we don't have a buyer yet because we literally just finished it a couple days ago. So we don't know where this story is leading, but we know that this story is not just going to stop here. There is going to be the continuation of the story and someone's going to be able to enjoy this beautiful bike. But hey, I'm not complaining because I think all of us here at Motomillion enjoy the presence of this bike because number one, it's just been finished and it's just stunning to look at. And on top of it, it's an amazing piece of machine to ride. And I think next on the story of the Motomillion Panigale V4 SP2 is the walk around video of this motorcycle, which you guys can be expecting to be out shortly. We're going to be showing this bike to all you guys who enjoy our videos and like seeing content with these beautiful machines. But till then, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Until next time, guys, have a good one.